All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. Quick mic check. Um, Suzanne, I just want to make sure that I can, you hear me loud and clear.
Yes, loud and clear.
Awesome. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the TSIA2 Learning Resources webinar and live demonstration. For those of you that have been undergoing our our institution administrator training with the College Board, you have been long awaiting session 4, and this webinar definitely counts towards will provide you credit towards that session. Joined with me today, I have colleagues from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. I have a colleague from the College Board, as well as a colleague from Pearson who will be with us today. So at this time, before we get started, I want to yield the floor for them to introduce themselves to you. Suzanne?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We look forward to hearing a lot of really good information that, of course, will provide additional resources for our students.
Kathy?
This is TSI.
And this is Kathy Montanisi with the College Board. Welcome, everyone. We're glad you could join us today for part 4 and looking forward to the session with you all today.
And Greg.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Greg Laffey. I am a program manager with Pearson supporting College Board in this product, and I'm looking forward to giving you a demo to show you the capabilities of TSIA2 Learning Resources today.
All right, now that we have introductions out the way, here's the agenda for the day. So we've had our welcomes. I'll go over some TSIA2 FAQs. We have a number of questions that we will receive and answer on a routine basis, and we'll provide you with some of those responses to those questions. And then we'll jump right into what we're here to learn about today, and that's the Texas Success Initiative 2.0 Learning Resources tool. And I'll give you a quick overview of the tool. We'll talk about the types of access available, its intended use, and then we'll end with a live demonstration that Greg will provide us with, and we'll offer a time for you to ask any questions that you may have. As housekeeping, if you have any questions, please submit them to us via the chat function. We have the co-hosts that will be monitoring the questions, and they may respond to you live within the context of the presentation or wait to the end to address them. But you can submit questions to us via the chat function. So jumping right in, here's some commonly used abbreviations. For those of us that work across the K-12 and higher ed space, we know that we often use those colloquial terms. However, sometimes when we're talking to those outside of our immediate space, they might not have any clue of what we're talking about. So here's a common list of terms and abbreviations that we'll use throughout our presentation and other presentations related to the TSI statute, TSI assessment for your use. So before we get started, I'll talk to you about that list of frequently asked questions. So here's some highlights. The TSIA2 launch date is January 11th, 2021. I received actually 2 emails on yesterday from institutions asking, well, is it okay if we delay our implementation because it's not convenient for us? Much thought has been put into or much consideration has been given to all of the complexities of the implementation date. However, the statewide implementation date for the TSIA version 2.0 is January 11th, 2021, and that's both for institutions of higher education and our K-12 partners as well. Be reminded, the TSI, both TSIA and TSIA2 scores are valid 5 years from date of testing. So a common question we get, well, when the TSIA2 launches, does my institution still have to accept TSIA scores? And the answer is yes. With the TSIA2, there are only 2 sections. The current sections of reading and writing are being integrated into one section under the TSIA2 entitled English Language Arts and Reading, or ELAR. Regarding purchasing test units, any test units that you have on hand now will be transferred over in your account, and you will still be able to use those units for the TSIA2, and the unit cost remains the same at $1.75 per unit. Regarding ID protocol, when we launched the TSIA2, in concert with our partners at TEA, we've developed a ID protocol in which K-12 should enter their IDs, as well as those in which higher ed should enter their IDs. So that information is published in the AccuPlacer platform. That information is published in the AccuPlacer platform under TSIA2 resources. And if you have any questions about that, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. It's going to be very imperative that everyone who offers the TSIA is following the ID protocol in terms of registering students for taking the TSIA to ensure that we can enhance our data matching capabilities across statewide systems. For those institution administrators for the TSIA platform that are listening or watching this afternoon, be reminded, all 4 components of the TSIA2 training are mandatory for your institution to be able to administer the TSIA2. With the late launch of session 4, we're going to allow through the end of January for institutional administrators to complete the necessary training requirements. After that, if you have not, your account will be placed on hold and your students will be interrupted, or you will be interrupted from being able to administer the TSIA2. So definitely make sure that you complete your required trainings. And if you have questions regarding whether or not that your training requirement has been met, you can reach out directly to our colleague at the College Board, Dr. Kathy Montanisi. And last but not least, regarding training, the last week of live trainings is January 25th through 27th. And the link to access those trainings are on the landing page for the TSIA platform. So as soon as you log in and get past the splash screen, it's right there, and you can click that link to register. This webinar, again, does provide access or credit for session 4 of the TSI or the required trainings, and you must stay to the end. The link to the survey that you will complete to submit for credit for attending will be at the end of this session. You can access all TSIA2 resources, including the training decks, on the AccuPlacer homepage. And when we say AccuPlacer homepage, I'm referring to the TSIA platform, to the resources tab. The updated statewide pre-assessment activity for the TSIA2 currently provided through Quirium will be available the first week in January. That's a common question that I've been receiving. So if indeed you were wondering if we're going to continue to support the statewide pre-assessment, the answer is yes. And last but not least, regarding frequently asked questions, when will documentation for the TSIA2 be available? Here's a comprehensive list of pieces you can expect and the dates in which you can expect them by. And to highlight, when you go to the bottom, and you'll see some direct URLs for administering the, it's not on here, but for administering the TSIA2, there will be a different link that we'll be sharing with you. So if you are an institution administrator, be on the lookout from those emails from our College Board contact, Kathy Montanisi, because it's very important information that will be relaying to you throughout those communications. We have one coming up, if it hasn't already went out this week, by the end of this week, and then we'll follow up with a reminder email with very pertinent information to you at the top of the year. So now that I've addressed kind of like the frequently asked questions, what is the TSIA2 Learning Resources? The TSIA2 Learning Resources is a free online library of instructional and practice materials aligned specifically to TSIA content. This library of resources is comprised of a variety of open educational resources and may include printable or interactive worksheets, tutorials, or instructional videos. Access to TSIA2 Learning Resources. Access is available for both students and educators. And here's the link. And before you snap it, copy the picture, the link is not available for use yet. You'll see on December 20th, we'll be doing a soft launch or a pre-launch in which we'll provide general access only. And then we'll fully launch on January 11th. And I'll share with you a little bit about when I say general access, what that means shortly. Within the TSIA2 Learning Resources library, you'll have the access to browse and filter resources by TSIA2 subject area, the content strands of the assessment, and or the type, format, and difficulty of the resource. And note, for the educators, your ability to filter resources will be a little bit more granular than for the student. You will actually be able to link to resources based on the state standard that's being assessed, i.e. the Texas College and Career Readiness Standard or the TEKS. So for educators, I know you've been waiting to hear this information. So what type of access will you have to this system? You'll have two ways to get in. General access. At any time, you can go in as an educator and enter the site to browse or search all resources using a passphrase. The passphrase is a passphrase, I hate to use it again, but it's a code, so to speak, where you can enter and it'll give you access to the educator side of the library, juxtaposed of if you just click in, you could go in just at the student level, at the student site. However, you have a way to go in without creating an account as an educator. And then you also have the opportunity for individualized access. And through individualized access, you have the opportunity to create an individual account that you can manage, and you can create custom assignments in the library, and you can even share them with students, and you can upload your own resources. You can share those resources with other colleagues. It's pretty interesting, some of the things that you can do, and Greg will provide you with a live demonstration of some of those capabilities shortly. For students, they also have two ways to access the system. For general access, at any time, the student can enter the site to browse the resources. And in this particular case, it could be used as in preparation for the TSIA. So if the student knows, oh, I really struggle with fractions, they can enter the site and browse for those instructional and practice materials related to that pre-identified area that they would like to grow in. And also, students have custom access to the system as well. However, the custom access is limited to those students that do not meet the college readiness benchmark. And when you don't meet the college readiness benchmark and you complete your diagnostic testing, that diagnostic test results are then used to generate what we call a locator code or a learning locator code. And also for students that take the essay and don't meet that college readiness area as well, it takes that information and creates a learning locator code as well. And note that for custom access for both educators and students, that functionality will not be available until full launch on January 11th, 2021. However, educators, once we launch on the 20th and that soft that soft launch, we encourage you to go in and familiarize yourself with the resources. So what is a learning locator code? The learning locator code, it's a code or link that's printed on the student individual score report. So after the completion of diagnostic testing, the student will get their student report. It'll have a diagnostic profile, and you can see that the way that it's structured, it'll be math and then a set of numbers, or ELAR and a set of numbers. The Learning Locator Code provides the student with access to an individualized custom set of resources within the TSIA2 Learning Resources Library. We're really excited about this because when the student clicks on their Learning Locator Code, it then provides them with a reduced set of resources in the library specific to their performance on their diagnostic tests. And if the student is underprepared in both areas, ELAR and mathematics, they will receive separate learning locator codes for each. And as I just shared, the students can link directly to the TSIA2 Learning Resources Library through their electronic student score report by clicking the link, or they can take that code and enter it manually on the login page for the TSIA2 Learning Resources. So you heard me mention earlier that the Learning Locator Code is part of the student's diagnostic profile. The diagnostic profile, I'll highlight, has three major components to it. And while it's not specifically highlighted as a diagnostic profile in the student score report, these are the components: the overall diagnostic level of 1 through 6, a proficiency indicator and statement for each of the strand areas. And note, regarding the proficiency indicators and statements, each proficiency, basic, proficient, or advanced, contains a range within those, although it's not returned on the student score report. So the same combination of proficiency indicators may result in a different overall diagnostic level score. And I highlight that for the specific reason that now, with the math test on the TSIA2, there's a second chance pass opportunity where if a student scores a diagnostic level 6, that student is now college ready. So you might have students that have the same combination of proficiency indicators and statements. However, the overall diagnostic score could be different. And last but not least, the Learning Locator Code is part of that diagnostic profile as well. A common question we've been receiving: what are the college readiness benchmarks for the TSIA2? On October 22nd at the board meeting, at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's meeting, the board approved for use the revised benchmarks for the TSIA2, and they are as follows. For English Language Arts and Reading, if a student has a college readiness classification score greater than or equal to 945, and an essay score greater than or equal to 5, that student is deemed college ready, just as well as if the student has below a 945 on the college readiness classification test and a diagnostic level score greater than or equal to 5, and an essay score greater than or equal to 5. Pay close attention to the second, that second determination in ELAR. Often in the field, it's, oh, well, if the student has an essay score of 5, that student is college ready. That's not necessarily true. You have to give consideration to the diagnostic level score. So make sure that you're applying that second chance pass opportunity correctly. Regarding mathematics, a CRC or college readiness classification score greater than or equal to 950, pretty straightforward. And then what's new, the second chance pass opportunity, if the student does not meet that 950 CRC score, but scores a diagnostic level score of 6, that student is deemed college ready. While it's not highlighted here, it's important to understand that with the diagnostic test for the TSIA2, they have been calibrated to the same ability scale as the college readiness classification test. What does that mean? That means that we do not anticipate students scoring very low on the college readiness classification test and then scoring very high on the diagnostic test. So imagine for math that literally psychometrically the 6 is calibrated to the CRC score of 950. So if a student makes a 6, it's equivalent to the student scoring a college readiness classification score of 950. And the last thing I'll highlight on this slide, and I highlighted it earlier in the frequently asked questions, both TSIA and TSIA2 scores are valid 5 years from date of testing. So now I'm going to walk you through this visually. So I kind of shared with you what the college readiness benchmarks are, but I'll walk you through the branching profiles in the way that the student would experience the test, and then you'll be able to see who will receive a learning locator code. So for ELAR, in the ELAR, I'm starting with considering those students who have a college readiness classification score of greater than or equal to 945. So you start with the ELAR classification test. All students scoring greater than or equal to 945 are routed to the right place or essay. Based on the essay score, one of two things will happen. So first, if the student scores a right placer score of 5 through 8, that student is deemed college ready. If not, you'll see as right placer essay 1 through 4. The student will receive their right placer dimension statements and a learning locator code. And again, that learning locator code will provide them with custom access to the TSIA2 Learning Resources library based off their performance on the essay. For students with the ELAR classification test that do not meet the 945 benchmark, so students starting with the CRC less than 945, those students 910 through 944, you're routed to the ELAR diagnostic test. And based on your performance on the diagnostic test, one or two things will happen. If you receive a diagnostic level score of 1 through 3, the test ends and you'll receive your diagnostic profile and learning locator code. And note in this particular case that the student will not receive the essay. If the student scores diagnostic level 4 through 6, the student will be routed to the essay. Based on performance on the essay, there'll be one or two outcomes. First, if the right placer essay is scored 5 through 8, that student through the second chance pass opportunity is college ready. If not, and the student scores diagnostic level 4, regardless of their essay score, the student will receive their diagnostic profile and learning locator code. What's important to note about this particular situation is if the student scores, let's just say 5 through 8, that student has met essentially the college readiness component for the essay, and that student could then retest for the ELAR on just the objective section. They would not be required to redo the essay if they make a 5 or higher. For math, it's pretty straightforward. 950 to 990, college readiness classification. If not, 910 to 949, the student is routed to the math diagnostic test. If the student scores diagnostic level 6, the student is considered college ready. For students scoring diagnostic level 1 through 5, they'll receive their diagnostic profile and learning locator code. So that's a visual representation of the branching profiles of the TSIA2 and who will receive the learning locator code. Going back, I want to highlight one quick thing regarding the ELAR section that recently changed, and it's regarding the diagnostic level 4 and right placer essay 1 through 8, where they'll receive their my apologies, right here, regarding the right place of essay 1 through 4, where the student scored above 945 on the CRC, but did not meet the benchmark on the essay. We've previously shared that the students would be routed into the ELAR diagnostic as a result of not meeting that 5 on the essay. However, after further internal discussion, we've decided that the students will not route to the diagnostic as they've already demonstrated college readiness on the ELAR classification test. And since the diagnostic, being routed to the diagnostic, is determined based on the classification result, we did not feel that it would provide them with additional information or additional actionable data that the student could use to improve regarding their essay performance. Hence, they'll receive their right place of dimension statements and a learning locator code specifically addressing the essay. Regarding the TSIA2 Learning Resources, here are some recommended uses. General, I've shared before, as a preparation tool for the TSIA2. Both educators and students can go in and cherry pick those resources. That'll be of value to increase those skills and areas of weakness. The resource can also be used with the high school college prep courses. And last but not least, with the college readiness classes and workshops offered by IHEs. And note, while these are some of our recommended uses, you may have already developed some additional ways in which you would like to utilize the TSIA2 Learning Resources. And we love to hear those from you. In the upcoming semester, we'll be convening faculty work groups to further define the utility of this resource, and definitely we'll be checking in with you from the field to see how it's going and how your experience has been with the resource, and how we can better share this resource not only with the field, but how it could be used for the enhancing student outcomes related to the TSIA2. And now I'm going to yield the floor to Greg Laffey, who will provide a live demonstration of the TSIA2 Learning Resources.
Thanks, Keelan. Give me just 1 second while I get my screen shared. Keelan, can you see the screen? Just to check. Okay. Very good. So let's take a look at some of the capabilities of TSIA2 Learning Resources. Keelan has kind of talked through some of the points that we'll now show. The first thing that I wanted to demonstrate is this idea of sort of the general access that Keelan was talking about. So if a student has not yet taken a diagnostic test and received a locator code, but they just want to browse either in preparation for assessment or as a supplement to their learning, it's really very easy for students to come out here to tsia2.pearsonperspective.com, which is the website address for TSIA2 Learning Resources, and start to browse those resources. The concept of perspective is such that students do not need to create an account or have a specific login to access the resources. The rationale behind that is to make the resources as easy and as quick to access as possible, and also to prevent having to store and protect student personal information in the means of an account. So any student can come out here, and all we're going to do is click Enter Student Site. That is going to bring the user to a homepage that has launch buttons for both mathematics learning resources and ELAR learning resources. We're going to do some demonstration within mathematics. So if I am a student and I just want to browse resources, I can click that button, and that is going to take me by default to a listing of all of the resources that are available within TSIA2 Learning Resources. They are sorted by title here alphabetically. but the student has the ability to narrow things down and search for specifics. So I think Keelan's example earlier was if the student knows that they need more work on fractions, they can search for fraction, and that's going to give a list of resources that are specific to fractions. Some of the other ways that a browsing user can search, obviously keyword in the title or description, but then there's this advanced search option. And if I click on advanced search, I get some additional options where I can click checkboxes for specific types of materials, specific format, and difficulty level, as Keelan mentioned. So let's say that I wanted practice resources, I wanted interactive practice resources, and I wanted them of medium difficulty level. I could click those without any keyword search if I just wanted to bring up everything. And when I click search, I now have 58 resources that are practice resources of an interactive type that are medium difficulty level. And those metadata elements or those attributes of that resource are listed here for each of the resources. I also have access to a little bit of additional information. If I click the info button, it gives a brief description that's a little bit more detailed than the title. It also does include the standards, and then a link to actually view the resource. You can also view the resources by clicking on the title. I will show a couple of different resources to give you a sense of the different types of resources that are available just a little bit later in the demonstration. So if I wanted to search, just to give you a comparison, let's say now that I wanted to look at instruction type resources that are specifically videos of medium difficulty level, I can search there. I get a different listing of resources. Now I've got 201 resources available that meet those criteria. So that's an example of the ability to do advanced search. That gives a little bit more flexibility in the search options. Now, that is one way that students, and the only way during the pre-launch period that students will be able to access the resources. The other primary mechanism will be those diagnostic or right placer assessments that lead to learning locator codes, as Keelan described them, on the individual score report as a result of the TSIA2 testing. Here, I've got an example of an ISR or individual score report with a mathematics learning locator code. You'll see that that locator code is a hyperlink as well as the text. And so a student who has access to their electronic version of their ISR can click from that electronic copy of the ISR, and it takes them directly into TSIA2 Learning Resources. Again, there is no login because the students do not have personal login credentials or accounts within Learning Resource. The individualization of their experience is all handled through these learning locator codes, which are driven by their performance on the diagnostic strands. So for this Math 03 learning locator, we'll see that we've got some categories down the left-hand side. Those categories align to the strands within the mathematics diagnostic test. And so for each of them, there's both a number behind the strand name and there's also color coding. The number is indicative of the number of resources that are available for that align to that strand. And so you'll see here that there are 209 resources available for quantitative reasoning. Now, one of the things that the site, as we're doing the demonstration today, does not reflect is some work that we're still performing prior to the January 11th launch. that will further reduce the number of resources based on the student's performance so that they're not quite so overwhelmed. These numbers right now basically reflect all of the resources that are in the system currently that are aligned to that quantitative reasoning category or strand. So the number indicates how many resources are available, and then the color coding, which is explained by the key down here, aligns to the performance of that student in the diagnostic strand. So for example, for quantitative reasoning, algebraic reasoning, and geometric and spatial reasoning, that student scored basic on their, in terms of their proficiency on the diagnostic strand. For statistical and probabilistic reasoning, that student scored advanced. There were no strands in which the student scored proficient, which would be the medium level proficiency. So the system, when this dashboard page comes up for the student based on their locator code, defaults them to the first. This is basically prioritizing. So you'll notice that all three of the basic performance strands are at the top. If there were a mixture, and we can look at another locator code here in a second. If there were a mixture of basic, proficient, and advanced, you would see the basics pushed to the top. The proficient strands would be in the middle, and then the advanced strands would be at the bottom. So I'm automatically looking at quantitative reasoning because that's at the top of the list. So all of these resources here are related to quantitative reasoning. If I want to look at geometric and spatial reasoning, I simply click on that category on the left, and the list of resources switches to those that are aligned to geometric and spatial reasoning. And from there, students can go into any of the individual resources. They may be practice, they may be additional instruction in multiple formats, as we'll look at here in a few minutes. Okay, so let's go back out. There is one other way that we can use that same locator code to access the information. Let's say that the student does not have access to an electronic copy of their individual score report, but they either have a hard copy or somebody has told them that their locator code is math 03. I can type math 03 here in the login page or the landing page, click go, and it takes me to that exact same dashboard page with the same categories, the same resources, and the same prioritization based on the performance of that student. So the one point of confusion sometimes related to locator codes, and I think something that's important to understand, is that a learning locator code is specific to a combination of performance on the various diagnostic strands or right place or dimensions. It is not specific to the student. So math 03 is not specific to me, Greg Laffey. It's specific to everyone who performed the same way across all of the strands within math. So anybody who scores basic in these three strands and advanced in statistical and probabilistic reasoning will get that same math 03 locator code. Those are the basics of the general access. So those folks without a locator code or students with a locator code coming in, that pretty much summarizes the student experience. So now let's look a little bit at the educator experience. So again, as Keelan noted, this additional functionality will be rolled out as part of the full launch that will happen on January 11th. But I'm going to go ahead and log in as an educator now to show you some of the additional features that are available to you.
Greg, could we answer a few questions from the student side?
Sure.
we move on, the main one that I've been getting is if a student is deficient in several areas, let's say in math, will they get only one locator code for math, or will they get multiple locator code?
So they will always get one locator code for math and one locator code for ELAR, and which would also include right placer if they took the right placer. The reasoning behind that is we know the performance levels for that student. Let me pull up the page again. We know the performance levels based on the diagnostic strands. So each of those diagnostic strands gets a proficiency level, either basic, proficient, or advanced, and it's at that strand level. So if they have deficiencies, again, in all three of these areas, they will get one locator code, Math 03, that shows them that they have deficiencies in these three areas based on it being read as basic performance. They also get resources available if they just want to continue their learning path for something that they're not deficient in. So there's one locator code that covers all of the strands or categories of math, and then one locator code that covers ELAR and right placer. Does that help, Kathy?
Yeah, that is perfect. Thank you. And then the next one was when the resources come up, so the list that's on the right-hand side, and using the locator code, is there a way to group them by instruction for specific topics? Like, can you rearrange that list, I think is the question.
I don't believe you can rearrange the list. The only things that the student has available, they can sort by clicking the name ID column. They can sort by description. They could sort by type. So if they wanted to see all of the interactive, they could click type, and then that sorts all of the interactive to the top, or by format. So if they wanted to, see all of the videos, they could, I guess that doesn't work that way, but they can sort by format or by type.
Okay, perfect. And then one more, and then we can move on. Assignment sheet. When a student gets a learning locator code, will an assignment sheet be automatically generated?
No, and we will look at assignment sheets. So the assignment sheet process is driven by the educator login and their accounts. So we're going to take a look at creating an assignment sheet, and then we'll show how a student would access that assignment sheet here in just a couple minutes.
Awesome. So let's keep going then, Greg. Thank you for taking those questions.
You're very welcome. Okay, so let's go ahead and log in. Whoops. Okay. So you will see a very similar experience when you log in that you do when you click Enter Student Site in terms of the information that's available. The welcome message is slightly different because it does welcome you as an educator, and you can see in the upper right corner that I am actually logged in as a user, and I can click the little settings icon if I wanted to log out or to change my password. So that's a little bit different than the student because the student, again, isn't technically logged in as a user. I can still browse even logged in as an educator by clicking either of these icons, or I can just go to Learning Resources, and that will bring up the full list again. So there's no filtering currently. It's just a full list of all of the math resources because it's defaulted to mathematics. I can also switch to ELAR here and change that to ELAR. We're going to do the majority of our demonstration in mathematics. So thus far, pretty common. You will see a couple of differences as an educator. First of all, you've got this little heart icon. So one of the things that educators can do as they review resources is they may want to identify and flag those resources that they find particularly useful that are already in perspective. So I can click some of these resources with the heart icon, and then when I come over to assignments and click on the My Favorites tab, you'll see that those resources have now been added. One of the benefits of this is if you are interested in creating assignments or maybe creating multiple assignments over the course of a term, for example, you can flag all of those resources that you really want to use for your assignments, and then you can just come over here to assignments and review those to figure out which resources you've kind of flagged. So it can streamline or make it a little bit easier identifying those resources to include in your assignments. Let's go back to the resources for a moment though. The other thing that I wanted to show you was that, as Keelan mentioned earlier, educators have the ability to search by standards. So let's take a look at just a couple of these. If I search, I can, select any of the checkboxes that I want to for specific standards if I'm looking for resources that have been aligned to those CCRS standards, and it brings up a list of only those resources that are tied to that standard. So it's another way to sort of hone in or focus on those resources that are particularly useful. And I'm going to click out of those, click search again. That brings me back here. I just need to take a quick look. So one of the things that Keelan mentioned can be done is you're able to add your own resources. So you'll see here, I've got a list of some resources that I've added. These are resources that you may have, whether they be worksheets, practice tests, really anything that you've got in, say, PDF or Microsoft Word format can be uploaded to Perspective or to TSIA2 Learning Resources. And the thing to keep in mind here is those resources are only available to you. It's not adding that resource as something that can be accessed across all of the educators in Texas using TSIA2 Learning Resources, but it does allow you to upload your own resources in the event that you want to create an assignment that contains both your own materials as well as materials that you found in TSIA2 Learning Resources that you think would be beneficial. So you can kind of create an assignment that's a mix match of your materials and the materials available to everyone in Perspective. So I'm going to go back to Learning Resources for a moment, and I'm going to show you as you're browsing or as you're looking through the various resources. Let's say that I do a search on Greg, and you'll see these are my 3 resources. So when I am logged in with this user account, these resources will show up with all of the other resources. The way that I can identify things that I've created and uploaded is this little green icon here. So if I hover over it, it says my uploaded resources. So it shows that these 3 resources I created and added into my experience within Perspective. The process is pretty simple. If I want to come over here to my resources and add a resource, I can give it a name. I can select which subject. When I select either mathematics or ELAR, it gives me the standards. So I can select one or more standards that it aligns to, and then I can select the type. So maybe it's instruction, it's printable, and it's low difficulty. Then you just choose your file. Here, there's a checkbox. So one of the things that we try to make sure all of the resources that are available in Perspective are free, open resources. So we do have agreements with providers like Khan Academy or others, as well as some Pearson content that is licensed to be used or linked to through Perspective. All we ask is that if you're uploading resources to be used in assignments, that you kind of verify that it is content that you are allowed to use or share. So we're going to click that checkbox and then click upload, and that will add that additional resource to the platform. So now, as I mentioned, when I'm logged in as this user, those resources are available, as are any other Perspective resources for the inclusion in an assignment. So let's look at assignment sheets. I've got a couple that I've already added here. So I've got a statistics and probability assignment, which has 4 resources in it, and I've got a geometry assignment. So when you want to see the assignment sheets that you've created, you can come to Assignments, My Assignment Sheets, and it will list out this information. Now, that includes this assignment sheet code. And that code is what will be provided to students so that they can come to Perspective and access that assignment sheet. So if I were to log out and I were out here, and if I were a student coming in the same place where I would put a locator code, if I was looking for that dashboard for my locator, I can also put an assignment sheet, click go, and it takes me to the assignment sheet view. It's got all of the 4 resources that the instructor included in that. I can download a checklist. So again, because I don't have a user account, I may find it valuable to have a checklist that I print out, and then I can check off as I've completed those resources. Okay, let's go back to the Educator view. In addition, if I want to edit, I can click edit. That allows me to do a few things with my assignment sheet. I can search for additional resources. I can add resources to it and then save it. I can also share. So if I know one or more educators who are also in TSIA2 Learning Resources, and I want to share an assignment sheet that I've created because I think it's been really effective with my students, I can click share. It allows me to enter one or more email addresses. And then if those email addresses are associated with another user in TSIA2 Learning Resources, then that assignment sheet will automatically show up in their shared assignment sheets. So I have from another account shared an assignment with this account. And so if I click on shared assignment sheets, I will see that this assignment has been shared by this other email owner. How do we create the assignment sheets? It's pretty simple. Let's say that I'm interested in creating an assignment for polynomials. I could do a keyword search. All I have to do is start selecting. We'll assume for the moment that I've vetted or I've reviewed these resources and I've already decided. If not, you can certainly click on each of the resources to review them. But I can just click any of those resources. And you can see as I click these resources, they are being added to a cart, if you will. So all of the resources that I've clicked have been added over here on the right side of the screen. I can remove if I want to. I think I had actually started a different assignment sheet, which is why you're seeing more than what I've added. Let's just avoid confusion. We'll start a new one. So now you can see the resources that I've clicked on are adding over here. I can remove them if I decide, if I change my mind. I can also resequence them by just dragging them on the screen. Once I'm satisfied, I'll just click Save Assignment. I give it a title or a heading. I can put any note to the students. I could say complete by Friday, or just please complete these resources. I can review again. I still have the opportunity to resequence them or delete ones that I've changed my mind. Then I can select one or more email addresses to send it to. Now, here's some information about the assignment. Again, it's going to have one of those assignment sheet IDs like we used just a minute ago to access the assignment. It has not been saved yet, so it has not been assigned. As soon as I click the Save Assignment Sheet, you will see this populate with an assignment sheet code as well as a URL. At this point, I can download the checklist or the assignment sheet either from the teacher perspective or the student perspective. I think it's probably best to click Save Assignment Sheet first. It keeps you on this same screen. What that does is now when I click download the assignment sheet, it's going to include this sheet or the assignment sheet ID. Whereas if I did it before I saved, I can still download that assignment sheet, but it's not going to have my assignment sheet code. So this is what the student assignment sheet would look like. It's now got the assignment sheet code. It has specific instructions on how to go in and access the assignment sheet. And that is how we create an assignment. If we come out here to assignments again, under my assignment sheets, you'll see that we now have the polynomial assignment too.
Greg, could you take a couple questions?
Yes.
Okay, when the students complete the resources from the assignment sheet, is there anything that shows complete at the end of the activity?
There is not in the system. So it is, again, some of these resources even are not contained within perspective. For example, there could be instructional videos that launch out to Khan Academy. So for that reason, there's not really the ability to track and mark resources as complete. What they can do is, especially with assignment sheets, they can use that, that checklist to manually keep track of what they have and have not reviewed and completed.
Very good. And what is the email domain that if you email an assignment, that it would come from them so that they can make sure that their system will accept that domain?
Yeah, that's a great question. We can send out as part of minutes, but I do believe it's noreply@pearsonperspective.com.
Okay.
But I will verify that. Yeah, if you could make a note, Kathy, to verify, and then we can send that out afterwards.
Okay. And then another one was, can you please tell them how many learning locator codes there are for math and how many there are for ELAR? Do you know that? Or should we?
Off the top of my head, I don't, but it's a good segue into, so the document that I'm showing here on screen will be available in the Educator resources when you actually create an account and log into the site. And it obviously contains, and I've noticed that we need to update this prior to January 11th. These letters kind of indicate a previous indication. So we'll change that to reflect basic, proficient, and advanced. But you can see it as a large document, and because there is a different locator code for every combination of proficiency levels across the 4 strands in mathematics, there are quite a few math, but because we've got in ELAR, we have the 2 ELAR strands, but then we also have all of the right placer, the 6 right placer dimensions, there is a more extensive list of ELAR codes. So it's a lengthy list, but the good news is there's a resource that you can access from Perspective that has all of the locator codes in there and what combinations of proficiency performance they reflect. The other thing that could be beneficial in that regards is if a student had their ISR but they lost it, they certainly have the ability to go out to the student portal and get a copy of the ISR. But if for whatever reason they don't have access to their locator code, and there is information available to the educator that has their score information for the diagnostic strands, they can use that score information to sort of back into the locator code using this document. Because if they know that for example, in mathematics, if the student was basic in all 4, then they know that's math 01. If they were basic, proficient, and basic, then they know that that's math 13. So it is possible, even without the student knowing or remembering their locator code, to figure out what that locator code is.
That's a great tip. Thank you for sharing that. And then one more question. What access would faculty or someone need to only be able to create an assignment? Is that possible, Greg, or is it your everything?
So they want to create an assignment, but nothing else?
Yeah. Is it all or nothing?
It is all or nothing, but the
Okay.
good news is you don't have to use anything but the assignment, so that you don't have to upload any of your own resources. You don't necessarily have to do any of the searching for content, although if you're going to create an assignment sheet in Perspective, it does have to use the resources that are in Perspective. So presumably there would have to be some sort of review of the resources themselves to figure out which resources you wanted to include in an assignment.
Okay, perfect. I think that was all of the questions for the demo part. And then there were a few other ones, Keelan, for you. So you let me know when you'd like those.
I have one, Kathy, for Greg.
Okay, go ahead.
Can y'all hear me? Okay, good. One of the attendees asked Greg if you could click on just an example of a resource that a student, they're just curious what it might look like. I know you're on the educator side right now, but like, let's say a student clicked on a video, what would that look like, or a worksheet?
Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Deb, because I had intended to do that. I had found a couple that I think were related to some of these. Standards. So let me search on those because I think it'll make it quicker. Whoops.
Thank you.
Okay. So the first, let me do this and I'll just search by name. Okay, so this is an example of an instructional interactive. So I'm going to click on this. It opens up in a new window. This is actually a resource that's contained within Perspective, so you're not actually going to a different site. With this particular example, you get some instructional information, maybe some examples. There are some glossary terms. So the underlined URLs, you can click on those to get a definition of those glossary terms. It provides an example, walks you through the example, and then there's an understanding check at the end. So if I click on that, it opens up another little mini window, gives me a problem similar to what the example has done, and then I can click on an answer. Let's say that I think it's B. I can check my answer. tells me no, I'm wrong, and then it provides me with feedback on what the proper answer is. So I can go back and try again and see if I can get that correct answer. So that is an example of an interactive instruction resource. I can also okay, so here's an example of a video. So if I click on this particular resource, and I did not share my, I did not share the system audio.
Yeah, that's good. Just letting them see some different options.
Yep, and then I'm going to show one other.
They wondered if you could show an example of an ELAR.
Sure. Real quick before I do, so this one is from Khan Academy, and this is sort of a combination. So I can look at this resource, and you'll see that there are individual sort of resources of different types that are under that. So if I click this completing the square 1, it's going to take me, hopefully, here we go. So you'll see within the Khan Academy site, I've got this listing down the left-hand side. So there's a video that you can start at the beginning, and then there's, you can click on practice. Khan's looking for support, so I have to scroll down. So here's an example. So it shows you a video, and then it's got some interactive where you can put an answer in. So that's sort of an example of where you can access multiple resources of multiple types by clicking on a single resource. We can go over here to ELAR. Not surprisingly. So here's a printable. There's a root words. I haven't vetted these, so I don't know the good ones too, but here's an example of something that's more of a instructional reading material. Again, as Keelan said, the access to these, so the browsing access to the resources will start on the 20th of December, so you can start going in. But here is an example of a poem and then some follow-on questions that you can answer about the poem. So there's a sort of a printable worksheet. Does that help?
Thank you. And then someone asked, is there a way to filter and see which resources are with Khan Academy or not?
That is not possible. We don't necessarily have the source of the content in the searchable metadata.
Okay.
Let me just, out of curiosity, I've not tried this before, but see if the keyword search brings it up. No.
No. The other question was, they said, the math locator codes are broad. Do you have a suggestion of how a student could focus on a specific topic? I was wondering if they just put fractions like you've been showing, if that's the best way to filter out.
Yeah, I think how that information becomes available to the student probably depends on interaction between the student and educators or their own exploration. But the information that we have to sort of drive to that locator code is based on that strand level information. So we don't really have the ability to drill down at a lower level, say within statistics and probabilistic reasoning to specific topics within that. But if they know of a specific topic within statistics that they are struggling with, then they could use that keyword search to try to narrow things down. That would probably be the best approach to try to narrow it down.
And then finally, does ELAR include Khan Academy resources as well?
I will have to follow up. I can
Okay.
send some information on that out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Deb. Thanks. So Keelan, that pretty much takes me to the end of what I planned to share in terms of the demonstration. So if there are some additional questions, I think Kathy mentioned that were not related to learning resources, I think this would be a good time to start addressing those.
Very good. I pulled out a few, Keelan, that folks have been asking. One common one that we're getting, if a student completed the pre-assessment activity for the current version, will they need to do the pre-assessment activity for the second version? And I think you're probably muted, Keelan, if you're talking.
Can you hear me?
There, yes.
All right. I was trying to find the window that I was in with the mute button. All right. So that's a local decision. So we'll have the statewide supported pre-assessment activity available the first week in January. However, if you feel that your current PAA has the information to where students get the breadth of what the TSIA is as an assessment, its purpose, its use for placement, and such that it meets the protocols, you can allow them to use the current version of your PAA until the new version becomes available and not require them to redo the PAA prior to taking the TSIA2. However, if you feel that, okay, we really want them to understand this is a very different test than the initial assessment, and you want to require them to retake the PAA, you can do that as well, but that will be left to a local decision.
Thank you. And then will the branching profiles be updated for the new version by the College Board? Will that work be done for us so we do not have to do that?
The answer to that question is it depends. So in essence, yes, all of the new branching profiles, the scenarios where I shared with you regarding ELAR, where in a retest only scenario where a student may be eligible to take the CRC only or the essay only, those branching profiles will be preloaded. However, if you use any additional for the institutions of higher education, the IHEs, and Kathy has been sharing this throughout her communications as well, if you use any of the other AccuPlacer resources that you, as a result of their performance on the TSIA2 or currently on the TSIA, you have them go into another AccuPlacer test for further testing, you would need to update your branching profiles. But specifically related to K-12, you would not have to update any branching profiles. They would all be preloaded for you.
Thank you. And then it says, if we may ask Keelan to confirm if the TSIA1 essay score of 5 to 8 may be used after January 11th.
Great question. And the answer to that is yes. So given that there are no changes to the right placer, the essay component, if a student has already made a score of 5, that score can be combined, or in the retest scenario, that student can retest on the TSIA2 on the ELAR objective or the CRC section only. And the essay score can be paired with that CRC score to potentially demonstrate college readiness. So if in the retest scenario, that student retakes the ELAR CRC and that student makes a 945 or greater, that student would then be considered college ready.
Will there be any standard background questions required by the coordinating board preloaded?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Will ISR show pass scores from both TSIA and TSIA2? Do you want me to answer that one, Keelan?
Yes.
Yes, if you choose, in the dropdown, if you choose show previous scores, you will still, all that data will still be in there for 5 years. Is Right Placer the same test? And it is the exact same test. That is not changing. And then this one actually is for Greg. It says, I may have missed this, but where did the resources for the learning resources come from? Were they submitted, created, vetted? I think you touched on that a little bit, but someone must have missed that answer.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. So the resources come from a variety of places. Some of them are Pearson developed resources. The initial set of resources are those that have already been incorporated into Perspective for prior implementations. And then a process was done where a content team reviewed all of the resources and then aligned them to the CCRS standards in Texas. So that's the vetting process. We have a number of agreements with external providers like Khan Academy that basically say our resources are free and open to use for anyone anyway. So we don't mind the Perspective platform sort of consolidating those or providing a centralized access to those and other resources. So it does bring up, so Keelan had mentioned earlier a process that's going to take place, I think, in 2021 as you sort of figure out the utility and how you want to implement this. There is absolutely the opportunity over time for vetted resources to be identified that Texas feels should be available to all educators within Perspective, and then a process for that content to be brought into the platform to be aligned to the CCRS standards, if not already done so. So there is the opportunity to grow the resources that are available through some sort of process that is probably yet to be determined.
Thank you. And if a student, this is for Greg, if a student has, or excuse me, Keelan, if a student has an essay score of 4 from TSIA1 on the Right Placer, will that count going forward in the with the new version?
The answer to that question is no. 4 is not a demonstration of college readiness on the TSIA2.
Thank you. And then I'm getting still lots of questions about where they can find parts 1, 2, and 3, and then this version, and then all of the supporting documents. And that is located, folks, when you log into the AccuPlacer platform, and right on the homepage, there's a link that says TSIA2 training materials. When you click on that link, it will take you out to 3 folders. One will have recordings of parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. The other one will have supporting documents. And then there's a 3rd folder that will have the test specification documents.
And Kathy, so I'm going to jump in real quick and I'm going to share. Hopefully it's on the screen. I can't see the.
Yes, it is.
All right. So this is actually what the TSIA2 individual score report, I would say a strong draft of what it's going to look like. And first, if you are a testing center director or if you've interfaced with a current version of the score report, you'll see that it's very different and it's intentional. So the first thing you have up top, the student information, and we've standardized this in a way to where the most critical information, the placement test information, is going to be first. If you use customized messaging at your institution, that now will be the last thing included in the report. And the rationale is oftentimes these reports are used to convey information that's very critical to help ease the burden on advising, and we totally understand that. But sometimes with the level of information that's included in that customized message, it pushes the placement test results and the diagnostic information sometimes to pages 3 and 4. So we want to make sure that the most critical information, the test results, that are available to the student are the first things that they see. And then the moving through, so you can see placement test results, and it'll give you, just like this, the TSIA, the sections that they take. In this particular case, the student has scores for the complete suite of tests, the ELAR, and then you see the diagnostic score of 3, the mathematics, and this will be updated. It'll say TSIA2 mathematics classification test, something to that effect, and career readiness will not be associated with it. The right placer score, and you see the dimensions there in terms of providing the student feedback on, let me change this to where I can scroll real quick. You see the right placer dimensions in terms of how the student performed. And this student did fairly well with a right placer score of 6. And FYI, this is a hypothetical ISR. So when I'm referring to the student, this is not a live student record that I'm presenting. Make it a little bigger for you. All right, and then here, I actually received a question. So if you participated in beta testing, you noticed that the proficiency levels that you received as part of beta testing were still associated with the current TSI. This particular score report has been updated to where you see the basic, proficient, and advanced. However, for all of these, it reads basic, and then it gives you what we refer to as the the proficiency indicator, and then the proficiency statement, and that's the text in the box. And you see that for each of the test strands. And then it moves into the math diagnostic. And as Greg also highlighted in his presentation, you have the TSIA2 Learning Resources information here. And if you opt to have local background questions or a customized message, those will populate after all of the information that I just shared with you. The protocols that we're going to put in place for score reports for those that do administer these particular components within the TSIA platform, that they are not to change. This dynamic profile, we really want it to be consistent across sites. So you cannot change the order of the information in the score report. It'll already be blocked into the template. So if you want to print your local background questions, it's already ordered where it needs to show up. So there should be no change, no reason to change the format of the ISR. And again, that's to create a consistent look and feel for the ISR across the state. And again, this is what the ISR will look like. So you have anything to add regarding the student report, Kathy?
No, other than it'll be set up for them. So there's nothing that they have to do to make this happen. It will just be there.
All right, and in our final minutes, I'm gonna jump back to, hopefully, did it jump back to the presentation?
Yes.
All right. Just to highlight the trainings that Kathy has been referring to, that they're virtual. And again, this requirement is only for the institutional administrators, while proctors, proctor reporters, site managers, and every other role in the TSIA platform, we welcome you to participate in the trainings. In order for your institution to receive the appropriate credit for these trainings, someone designated, at least one person designated with an institution administrator role, must attend all 4 trainings. This training, this particular webinar, will serve as a credit for session 4. And note that the last week of live training will be January 25th through 27th. And the link to those trainings can be accessed in the TSIA platform. And here's what you've been waiting for. So for the institutional administrators, if you would like to receive credit for attending, just as with the previous 3, hopefully that you've attended, that you'll go to this URL and you'll enter the necessary information and submit. And then it'll be added to, you'll be provided credit to your account. I believe regarding sessions 1 through 3 for our institutions of higher education, we were at very close to 100% of full compliance in terms of meeting that requirement. So now we'll have some that have completed session 4. As an update to this, probably early January, unless Kathy and her team are super rock stars, which I know they are, they will release the official module for session 4. While this session will be published on the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board's YouTube page, beyond this webinar, it will not serve as credit for session 4. You must complete the College Board's release module that will come out at latest in early January. And as a reminder, you have till the end of the month to complete session 4. And that's the one that we'll be releasing. And again, the last week of live training for sessions 1, 2, and 3 will be in the week of January 25th. And I'll put that back up shortly, but I have a couple of more slides and then we'll get out of here. If you
just a quick question.
Go ahead.
So basically proctors are just going to do the training on acupuncture as they normally do and take the test?
That's totally different than kind of like what we're talking about with the required training. But if a proctor is going to be approved, they would have to be issued credentials by their institutional administrator or site manager, and they would have to complete the required training to gain access to the platform. But this is specifically related to access to the platform, period, by anybody. If an institution fails to complete these required trainings, their account will be suspended temporarily until the trainings are complete. That's the major difference.
So the proctors, I know in the past, the proctors used to have to go in and take the assessment through Acuplacer to be able to have their logins.
Spot on. That, again, that's different than what we're talking about.
Okay.
And that hasn't changed. That remains, yeah.
So that's still, okay. So they still need to do this. And then other than that, the 4 parts are only for the institutional, whoever is in charge of the assessment.
And then they need to take it back, and we're providing a train the trainer deck. So then the institution administrator will go back and make sure that anybody who is administering TSIA has received that training. They just don't have to attend this official training.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Last but not least, if you do not subscribe to our listserv, here's the link will be provided in the slide deck as well as the QR code. And that's to get firsthand information related to TSI, TSIA, and developmental education updates. And if you have a nuance to at the higher education institutions, your placement protocols for TSIA2, I was responding to a number of those questions, particularly ELAR. I know that it's not the easiest to follow. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me or Suzanne regarding your questions. There's no question too small or too big to bring to us. We are here to help. If you have questions related to training in terms of has my institution met the requirement, if you need to inquire about that, you can contact Kathy Montanisi. And Kathy, if you could drop your email out to the chat to everyone, if possible.
Yes, I will do that right now.
All right. And the last piece, Greg, in regards to, and I'll update the presentation before the slide deck goes out, and I think you might have alluded to it, if there is a support question related to TSIA Learning Resources or TSIA2 Learning Resources, where can we direct the field?
Let me let me confirm, and then we can send that out as part of the follow-up information. I mean, certainly I can address questions or reach out to someone, but I'm trying to figure out if that's the best way to centralize it or if there's another. So can I get back to you on that, Keelan, and then we can send it out to everyone?
And that's one of the reasons why I didn't include your contact information in the slide directly. However,
I realized that I put my email address in the demonstration, so.
Okay, awesome. But at any rate, if you have any questions related to TSIA2 Learning Resources, there's a team at the coordinating board. If we can't provide you with the answer, we'll definitely work with our partners at the College Board and or Pearson to provide you with the correct answer. And before we go, Kathy, Deb, do you have any closing remarks, or anybody from the College Board team? I saw a number of your colleagues sign in.
Thank you, Keelan. I just want to say, again, thanks everyone. I know this is a lot of information you've been taking in over the last few weeks. And if I missed your question on the chat, my apologies. If you want to just drop me an email, if I did miss anything, I'm happy to answer that way as well. And as Keelan said, please reach out with any questions. There are no crazy questions and we're happy to help.
All right, we do thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, again, that have not been addressed, feel free to email me directly and I will do my best to respond to you within the next 48 hours. Till then, have a safe and happy holiday. And if I don't hear from you or see you before then in the meeting, Happy New Year. You all have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.